promotions under the new promotions scheme that was approved late last year. We have considered all of the applications from the first round and reached a decision that there's a prima facie case on some and not on others, and that has been communicated to candidates, and we'll be proceeding the same way with the second round. So basically, at the end of our deliberations, if you've applied, you would get a communication either saying, no, we don't feel that you've met all of the criteria required, and we will give you feedback, and that has now gone out. A couple of things got delayed by COVID-19, but that has now gone out to unsuccessful candidates in the first round. Or we have decided that a prima facie case exists, and we will now write to external assessors. And if they confirm and if they agree, then a follow-up meeting, in this case September, in the case of the next round it could be February, March, will then decide to promote or not promote based on the external assessment. And we would expect and hope that in most cases that would be a confirmation of our prima facie case, but it's not an absolute guarantee, and I just need to say that in advance. And either way, the date of promotion would be, even if things are delayed by the external assessment, the date of promotion would be backdated, which is normally the 1st of October if you apply to the February deadline, or the 1st of April if you apply to the August deadline. Okay, so in other words, 9 months after you've applied, 8 to 9 months after you've applied. So if we want to move on through the slides, I'll just go through the principles and then I'll take a Q&A. So unlike previous promotion schemes in this university where there was a capped number of places and people were effectively competing against each other for those places, this is simply based on achieving recognized standards. It's based on academic peer review, including external elements, and we have 2 external members of the board, both from the UK, one on the STEM side and with a very research-intensive career, although he was also a dean, and the other on the teaching and learning side and on the with a background in the arts and humanities and social sciences. She rose all the way to be a PVC in one of the universities in the UK as well. So both have leadership experience, but there's a balance there between research, on the one hand teaching and learning, and the other, and between STEM and what we call here ABL, Arts Business Law, as a handicap, as a abbreviation in this university. So there's no cap on the number of places, and that is critical. There are regular 6-monthly deadlines, and you'll see those towards the end. Sorry, can we just go back a bit? And one of the core principles, and this was established during the consultation, and heads of school were particularly strong about this, is that high levels of performance are expected across each of the 3 core criteria: research, scholarship, teaching and learning, and contribution. And in terms of senior lecturer A, that means effectively, in terms of those who are lecturer A, that means effectively scholarship, although many who are lecturer A also have a research profile, and they can also put that forward as part of that. Okay, next slide. So all academics with a minimum of 3 years service at NUI Galway are eligible to apply, irrespective of current grade. We used to have, you had to reach a certain level on the previous grade to be eligible to apply. Now, once you've done 3 years in the university, you can apply for the very top if you want. That's your call if you think you're meeting the criteria. The Academic Promotions Committee is gender balanced. It's exactly 50-50 male-female. And the externals are 1 male, 1 female as well. So the entire committee is balanced. The university is committed to equality, diversity and inclusion in the scheme, and progress will be constantly reviewed in this regard. And this includes, for example, a specific mechanism for recognizing protected leave and adjusting achievements upwards for the purposes of assessment. And that is the measurable assessment, the measurable things. So, for example, research grants, PhD completions, publications, etc. Okay, and to give it at its most simple level, you basically get credit for whatever your average level of performance was in the years that you weren't on protected leave, whether that's maternity, whether that's carers leave, or whatever. You get equivalent, you get credited for the equivalent level of performance for those years as you were in the years when you weren't on protected leave. So a basic simple example would be that if someone had been here for 10 years and they had 16 research papers, but they'd had 2 years of protected leave, say 2 maternities in those 10 years, then we count it as equivalent to they've actually been working for 8 years. They've got 16 publications, therefore they've got 2 publications a year. Therefore, for the purposes of measuring whether they've met the criteria or not, they get credited with 20 publications because they've been with us for 10 years. And as I say, grant levels and PhD completions would be adjusted accordingly. And that calculation is done, by the way, by the Equality Office here. It's not done by the panel itself, and that is given to us then. And just to say that financial considerations play no part in any individual assessment. We're not sitting around looking at whether a school or a college can afford to have you promoted or not. That simply is not part of the discussion, not part of the equation, not part of the criteria. Full stop, end of story. And the heads of school and deans have been advised accordingly and are expressly required not to make any observation in that regard whatsoever in their reports. And I'm delighted to say that they all took it to heart in the first round and no such observations were there in the first round. All unsuccessful candidates will receive detailed feedback on the reasons why they were unsuccessful. We will try and tally that with the communication of whether you're unsuccessful next time around. COVID-19 created some delays in the spring, not least because members of the panel themselves had various responsibilities to attend to in the middle of COVID-19. But the results, and whether you're successful or not, at least at the prima facie case stage for those who are deemed successful, were communicated in late June, and the feedback for the unsuccessful candidates went out yesterday morning, actually. What day of the week is this? This is Tuesday. This morning, was it? It was this morning, wasn't it? Yeah, it was this morning. And there will be follow-up meetings then for any unsuccessful candidate who wants such a meeting. And if they wish to appeal, they are required to attend, okay? So any unsuccessful candidate may appeal to the Academic Promotions Appeals Committee, and the policy outlines what the procedure is there. No one on the Promotions Committee plays any part in the Appeals Committee. It's a separate committee. It's constituted by the President, liaising with the HR to put that, and with the academic unions to put that together. But it is a requirement, if you wish to appeal, that you attend for written and oral feedback in order to be eligible to appeal. And again, the deadlines are all predicated on the different, on the flow chart, if you like. So if there's a slight delay, as there's likely to be during the summer because people take holidays and there are specifications about who needs to be in the room for the feedback meeting. So it may not happen as promptly over July and August as might be desirable otherwise, but that doesn't impact on your ability to appeal. You can appeal for up to 30 days after you've had that meeting. And then the role of the APAC, the Academic Promotions Appeals Committee, is to consider whether or not due process has prevailed in the consideration by the APC of an Academic Promotions Committee of an application for promotion. So it's not to form a second academic opinion. Candidates are expected to engage fully with their head of school before applying. And in that respect, one aspect I would advise anyone thinking of applying to engage with their head of school about at an early stage rather than leaving it to the last minute would be the nomination of assessors. So, and we'll come to that later in the presentation, but you're invited to nominate 4 potential assessors, not referees. If they write a reference, if they write something that they've understood it as a reference, it will be discarded and an alternative assessment will be sought, okay? And that will be for the board to make its judgment. And you should not be liaising with them, contacting them saying, will you be an assessor for me? But the head of school is also required to nominate 4, and they should be securing the permission from those assessors to agree to do that, from all of the assessors. So the earlier you liaise with them, the better, so that they can make up their mind and have time to think about which 4 they're going to nominate, and that they can make sure that they get the approval from those assessors to act in this role if called on. The head of school form, it must be countersigned by the dean, will be submitted by the head of school, and you as a candidate, if you apply, will have a right of reply to that, and we'll see the deadlines shortly in that regard, but they're up on the promotions website, which is the university homepage, /academic promotions, which is all one word. 2 external members, as I say, are on the panel as well. Next, yeah. So external assessors will be chosen by the APC if prima facie case is established in the opinion of the committee, from the list provided by the applicant and the head of school. Promotion will only follow if the external assessors clearly agree with the recommendation of the APC. Now, they are asked to write a detailed assessment. And having been on promotions boards that have this in some shape or form for many, many years, something that writes back and says, yes, the references speak for themselves, promote this person, will not be acceptable. That is an assessor not doing their job, frankly. If they also raise doubts, then there is a discussion to be had at the committee. Because if both external assessors come back negative or raising doubts, then promotion will not follow. If one is very positive and the other's hedging their bets, we might decide to go for a third one, okay? To try and get the person over the line. So we won't easily dismiss on the back of the assessors, but if it's clearly negative, then it will be negative. If it's clearly inadequate as an assessment, then an alternative. I'll take questions at the end of this, okay? But so I just see a question coming up there. Where was I? Yeah. So assessors need to do their job, and they need to be unambiguously supportive of you when they do the assessment of the decision to promote, of the prima facie case. Reapplication is not permitted within 2 years of an unsuccessful application, and that is within 2 years of when you apply. So even if for whatever reason our deliberations get delayed, if you apply now at the end of August, if you're successful, great. If you're unsuccessful, the earliest you can apply again will be the end of August deadline in 2022. An application this summer will again be via the HR portal, and if you go into the HR portal, you'll see that 5 posts have been advertised. That's just the mechanism by which we consider it. It's not that we're making 5 promotions, but they are SL Lecturer A type, SL Lecturer B type, and then the 3 tracks for personal professor: research, teaching and learning, and leadership. And from January 2021, we hope, and we've done a lot of testing in this, it just hasn't quite come together yet, so I don't want to take risks with it. It hasn't come together in its final shape yet. But we hope to have a dedicated online application system from January 2021. So the core criteria are a substantial record of research scholarship appropriate to contract and discipline, substantial record of teaching, supervision, and mentoring of students, and a substantial contribution to organizational leadership and management aspects internally and externally. There's something wrong with the syntax of that, but we'll tidy that up afterwards if it's in the documentation. But the intellectual, cultural, social life, including external engagement activities for and on behalf of the university that are beyond the confines of academic engagement. And just to be clear about that, so, I mean, contribution, we deliberately, on the back of engagement with the academic unions last year, we merged the internal and external engagement into a single box. So it might be 80% internal, it might be 80% external, entirely up to you, but that is not the place to put all your organization of academic conferences. This is about engagement beyond the confines of academia. In other words, what social groups are you going out engaging with? What policy aspects in government? What influence on business or on science are you having in the commercial sector? It could be any of those, okay? But it is not, I organized 25 conferences with 25 other universities around the globe. That belongs further down in research activity, okay? So contribution is that kind of contribution and engagement beyond the core research activity, okay? And beyond the core teaching activity as well, of course. And then for a senior lecturer, it's any 5 of those 10 criteria, but choose them wisely. And we did get a good range of categories chosen in the first round of applications. There were over 30 people who applied for SL in the round that had the deadline of last January. But do choose them carefully because they are optional. And the overriding word at SL level is substantial. Your achievement in any of those criteria must be considered by the committee to be substantial. Okay, now, what is substantial? Look, we're trying to be as comparable to other systems as possible. There's no formula for anybody. But if you're coming along and saying, I got one grant of £500, for example, don't choose that category. You know, if you're coming along and so, you know, you're going to have to make a judgment call. But if you're in doubt, then you're probably better choosing a different category. And you can see there that those, so again, originally when these were posited, the 5 on the left there were kind of what would be expected of someone on a Lecturer B contract, and the 5 on the right, someone expected from a Lecturer A contract, even allowing for disciplinary differences. But the engagement of the unions led to us putting all 10 together and giving you the option of which 5 you choose. So choose carefully. This is where you get to figure out what it is you're really good at, what you're strong at, but really don't stretch yourself thinly. And the other key point, by the way, is don't duplicate stuff. I think that's in one of the slides further down. If we move on to PP. So a core criteria for whichever track you go on personal professor is that you have the contribution, both internal and external there, effectively. And if you want to be a professor, you're going to have to show that you are professing out there in the big wide world, not just internally. Because professor really is not the kind of internal, it's not an internal promotion track. So those are the core, and then you've got 3 tracks. So there are 9 criteria. Whichever track you choose as personal professor. At SL, it's 8. But in personal professor, then it's clearly defined depending on which track you go. So personal professor, research and scholarship. It is the first 6 there. So research outputs, they're similar to the SL thing. Is it's not as if you become an SL and then you suddenly have to go off on a different trajectory in your career. If you're primarily on the research side, then you'll find all these criteria listed again at PP level, but now we're looking for exceptional performance, not substantial. So it's research outputs, research leadership, and that leadership piece is really important there at personal professor level. Supervision of doctoral students and postdoctoral researchers. So there's been a bit of tweaking in the word there because we had postdocs down as students in the previous round, and that was pointed out as we were assessing it all, and we've amended that and run that went through a meeting with the unions as well. So any minor changes that are there have been agreed with the unions, bar one issue, which I will mention towards the end, and that's about substandard applications, which I'll come back to. Research funding, exceptional impact of research, internationally excellent standing. And even if you're going the research track for personal professor, you're still expected to be making an outstanding contribution to teaching, supervision, and mentoring of students at most or all levels in the school. So it's not as if you can get an SL and say, right, teaching's behind me, I'm now going the research track. You still must play your part in the core activities. And I think that's important. That is fundamental to what this university is about. We can move on to the next one. We have the teaching and learning track for personal professor. Exceptional contribution to teaching and supervision, and you'll see most of those criteria are the ones that were on the teaching and learning side of SL. So you will see those, but you expect someone who wants to be a personal professor in the teaching and learning to be up there and have some kind of national standing, international standing. And we deliberately say national/international. It might be really, really prominent national standing with slightly more limited international, or depending on the discipline, it might be the other way around. And a PP at teaching and learning would be expected to have serious research output as well, an outstanding record of research outputs. And that's, if you like, the inverse then of how we're looking at the research thing. So it's not as if you get a personal professor just for being a teaching, you've got to be professing it. You're going to be researching it. Maybe pedagogic research, maybe largely, not necessarily exclusively pedagogic research, but really to be a professor in teaching and learning track, you are professing through publishing, amongst other things, your excellence in teaching and learning. And then the leadership track. So exceptional leadership at university level, at national level, substantial external impact at international level. We also expect both the teaching and the research here, which are 4 and 5. And then additionally to that, any of the criteria, 2 more criteria, so that is also 9 in the leadership track. 2 of the criteria under PP research or teaching and learning, not already in this list, i.e. not 4 and 5. okay, or not already there. Professional conduct. So the committee, both the promotions committee and the appeals committee, we are bound to absolute confidentiality in respect of all deliberations of the committees, subject only to the fact that documents are FOIable after the process. Under no circumstances should candidates approach or seek to influence members of the APC on any matter relating to their application. That includes after the event. You have no entitlement whatsoever to approach a member of the committee and ask them to have a discussion with you while anything is still ongoing. Now, if somebody's a colleague and a year after you didn't quite make it for promotion and the appeals mechanism and everything else is exhausted, if you want to seek a bit of advice from a colleague, as a colleague, fine. You should not be seeking advice from them as a member of this committee. And they have been told as well that they are not allowed to engage with you, so don't take offense if they actually abide by the terms of their membership of the committee. Heads of school and deans are required to respect and maintain the confidentiality of all individual applications. And I'll be doing a briefing in August, early August. I'll be doing another briefing like this for candidates in early August, but I'll also be doing a briefing for heads of school and deans in early August as well, around what's expected of them, as I did last time as well. Those are the deadlines, and lest anyone think that there wasn't going to be any deadline after 2022, we've given a commitment that there's going to be a deadline every 6 months. And so therefore the first deadline in February 2023 has been put in. So the next 6 deadlines are there and they're up on the website, and it's 4 p.m. and it's the last working day of the month. So do be mindful of that. The deadline next February, if you're thinking on a slightly longer game, will not be the 28th of February, it'll be the 26th of February, because the 28th is a Sunday. And it's 4 p.m., not midnight. The last time we had a promotions around here 4 years ago, we had ISS people working until midnight to make sure that nothing collapsed while people were trying to submit applications. And frankly, that's not fair on our colleagues in ISS. They've got families too. So it's 4 p.m. So all the information to do with the scheme is at that website. It's the homepage /academic promotions. If you have any questions, you should address them to academicpromotions@nuigalway.ie, and the responses will be compiled. It's not that you'll necessarily get an individual reply, but responses will be compiled, and there's an FAQ page on the website already. I think I'm right in saying, Dermot, maybe you can nod. Yeah, it's there. And then a link to the HR application system is included on the Academic Promotions homepage. And that is the link. So this presentation will be up there as well after this. Or is it already up, Dermot? Is this presentation already up on the?
Yes, it is. It's online, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you can get those links through this presentation up there. And that is the last page, I think, that I've got. So I'm happy to take questions now. And I'll maybe go to the ones that are in the chat first. Can one of your referees be a retiree? And if so, is